Oh, there we go. Sorry, we're coming at you hot. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Kenny and Renny show. Joined today by special guest Scott Billick of the Winnipeg Sun. Evening, Scottie. How are you today?
Doing good. I'm here.
Yeah, good to have
Everything's
you
good. Yeah.
here. No doubt about that. For folks who are wondering, Sean had a death in the extended family today. He's out in Roblin here. He was going to see if he could join us, but nothing confirmed yet. So obviously, our thoughts are with the entire family here. We're coming at you live after a 4-3 overtime loss by the Winnipeg Jets. We'll be spending a lot of time at the buffet this evening here. Maybe Scott, let's start with you. What was your takeaway from this evening's affair?
Yeah, it just feels like another one that let slip away, right? Like, I mean, of course they get the points, so that helps kind of soften the blow. But I mean, this is a team you didn't want to give a point to either, right? Like, this is one of those games where you want 2 points to take. They would have been behind Dallas by 3 points. Now it's six, right? It could have been seven. Mark Scheifele's goal is big for the team because they get that point. So it is better than nothing, as Savage there says. But at the same time, it's like, how many of these games are they going to have where it's like you play well enough and you should probably win that game and you don't find a way to win? You don't convert on some chances. I mean, good on them. They were 4 for 4 on the PK, nothing going on the power play. I mean, they only got one. I mean, that's kind of a reffing problem, I suppose. But yeah, I just you're kind of split, right? They played a good game. I don't think anybody's really going to say it. A couple of mishaps maybe on the goals, but on a couple of the goals. But at the same time, it's just this is a time where you need it. They got that effort that they needed, I suppose. But yeah, I think if you're a fan, it probably feels like a loss tonight.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting, right? I mean, anytime a team scores with the net empty and an extra attacker on the ice in the final, minute, it seems like
Yeah,
it's obviously an important point for the Jets, but the way that they kind of, I mean, obviously too, the penalty is up for debate on Scheifele. I mean, great job by Tyler Seguin. I mean, he basically grabbed.
yeah,
I think Scheifele initially taps the hands for sure, but because of Sagan's veteran move to kind of pull the stick in, it makes the play look worse than it actually was.
yeah.
But then the Jets survive the penalty kill, but then give up a goal right after. I mean, Jamie Benn just doing a fantastic job of getting to the front of the net and redirects the play from Gurionov, and there they get the lead once again. I mean, for the most part, the Jets, I think puck management and defensive systems were steady. I would say, maybe not spectacular, but once again played pretty solid on a lot of areas. But a couple of critical breakdowns. I mean, what maybe stood out in that department for you, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, the Neil Pionk pinch, right? And then that, and then Mark Scheifele kind of gliding through the zone when Sagan's going. I mean, I don't know. Do you have to be aware of that? I think so. And I don't like the gliding when the other guy is striding, right? Like when Tyler Sagan's skating to the net, somebody's got to be going after him. And I understand, too, at the same time, when a pinch happens, you don't always know that there's not always that coverage there available. So, but Scheifele wasn't taking strides once he hit the blue line. That's a bit of an issue. I think the other one, Andrew Kopp wants that goal back too. I think what happened there is, he has it wasn't Robert Peterson. He has Peterson kind of in the crosshairs for the most of that play. He turns after Peterson passes the puck cross ice to Radulov, and then he kind of loses him. And then when he picks him back up again, Peterson's already pretty much on the doorstep. And Kopp makes the effort to get there. He's just a half second behind, and that kind of costs him there, right? Too. I think that's why Andrew Kopp looked upset after that goal. I think he took that one on himself. Didn't get a chance to ask him that after the game, obviously, but I don't know. And then
I think
I
there was some
don't.
frustration too, right? I think it may have even touched his stick before it hit the skate of Peterson. I think
Yeah,
that's kind of what I saw. But yeah, I mean, it was in a little bit of a chase position. And again, we're not pinning any of this on any of the players, but I also think too, I mean, that's a situation where obviously the odd man rush doesn't happen unless the failed pinch occurs in the neutral zone. But I think this is another example where Ville Heinola didn't play the odd man rush super well. I think maybe he might have thought it was a 3-on-1, so you can understand why he's a little tentative. But on that play,
yeah,
he doesn't take the shooter, and he still allowed the lane to be across for the pass. So, but again, I'm not pinning this on him. I'm just saying that this is another example where because of the pinch, it put a young player in a difficult position, and the Stars were able to convert. And the one thing I would say too with Scheifele, again, you're right. I think you can see on the plays, like, he doesn't expect to have to be chasing, and then all of a sudden he realizes that Pionk is beaten in the neutral zone, and now it's too late for him to catch Seguin by the time he got his feet moving. So, I mean, just a lot of plays happening that's sort of leading to the goals against. And, I mean, again, in a lot of ways, didn't it feel like the Pittsburgh game? I mean, the Jets were kind of cruising along, and then, you made the great joke on Twitter. It's like gone in 56 seconds. I mean, that was just kind of one of those things where they just were not able to take care of business, and a couple plays end up in the back of the net, and the Jets weren't necessarily reeling from there, but they kind of, whatever momentum they had, sort of got stifled a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought the Jets weathered the storm in the first so if you watch the first 4 minutes of the game, you're going to think, hey, the Jets got hemmed in, right? But they only gave up one shot. And part of that seemed to be a carryover from on Tuesday's game, where the Jets kept a lot of it to the outside. And I thought they did a really good job of that again in the first, when they were kind of, I don't know, whatever it was, just battling a little slower start out of the gate. And then in the second, obviously, 50 seconds in, Pierre-Luc Dubois gets that goal. That's a big boost for this team. On the road, gets the goal, in the lead now. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was a great second period. I mean, obviously goals on both sides, but it was well played. I thought Brendan Dillon played tremendous again. I think the Jets are a better team when he's throwing his weight around like that.
Yep.
Stepping into hits. I think part of that might have been neutered at the beginning of the year because of the whole cross-checking thing and how many penalties he took in the preseason. He seems to now be, over the last couple of games, at least really engaging physically, right? And it's something they've missed since Buffalo, Dustin Byfuglien has been gone. So that's good to see. Thought Nate Schmidt had a good game tonight. But yeah, I just, like you said, it felt like that Pittsburgh game. It felt like they were right there pretty much throughout the whole thing. And then, they kind of just let it slide. And there's just been too many of those games. I think there are 3, I wrote in my game story, 3, 6, and 7 now, or 3, 6, and 5, maybe when tied
Trailing.
after the second period. No, when tied after.
Tied
going into the third. That's not a great, record, right? Like, you want to be on the better end of most of those, and a lot of points dropped there. So yeah, they just need more. They need that extra goal. They need to score that Ben goal, right? Where Ben, gets to the front of the net and just it goes in, and it's a great play by Jamie Benn. But it's created by centering pass on a guy going to the net, right? And that's the type of play that you don't always see with the Jets, or at least maybe not a lot when anybody but PLD's on the line, or on the ice. So yeah, I thought Jansen Harkins, again, that's another one who played well. I know that's going to be a point of contention here because he took Cole Perfetti's spot on the second line. But I thought Dave Lowry, I almost called him Paul Maurice. Dave Lowry said it nicely after the end of the game. It's Jansen Harkins kind of deserved it. He was. We said it in chat during the game that he was buzzing around, and he obviously scored the goal. I would argue that Cole Perfetti made a hell of a pass to make that goal happen. That's very good vision by Cole Perfetti to drop that pass off to Jansen Harkins coming into the zone there. But yeah, anyways, it's if you're a fan, I think it feels like the loss tonight, and that's kind of where we're at.
We'll get to all those things. Let's drill down a little bit on Brendan Dillon. Obviously, too, I know it's one of those unwritten rules in hockey. After a big hit, the gloves often get thrown down. I'm not a huge fan. I mean, again, I like my old school hockey, and for what it's worth. But that's a bit of an annoyance to me that, especially in that situation, and the reason why the instigator rule is in play is for situations like that. I understand the other side of the argument. Well, no, the hit was what precipitated the play. No, on a clean hit, if a fight happens, there should be a penalty to the person who insists on fighting, to me. But how I would also describe it is, I don't think that was necessarily a one-off for Jamie Benn. I think Jamie Benn was a little bit annoyed at the hit that Brendan Dillon gave Rope Hintz in the corner earlier. So to me, that was more of a cumulative effect than it was a one hit and you have to fight type of situation. And you could kind of tell, like, Brendan Dillon was a little bit like, he knows Jamie Benn. They played together. They're friends, and you could tell. And you could tell if that's a fight with, Jamie Benn tries to fight Blake. This is like the first game that I can remember that Jamie Benn didn't try to fight Blake Wheeler in the game, and you could tell at the end of that fight, Brendan was ready to he had enough. They were ready, they were tugging, wrestling, and Jamie whispered something in his ear. I'm pretty sure, if I had to guess, it would be, that's not personal, but I had to do that for my team.
Business.
And you understand that, but again, I like the physical nature in both those situations. I know that again, one of those, Brendan kind of, I wouldn't say that he hits awkwardly, but because there's a lot of body parts moving, and I think often his one leg is off the ice to begin with, and then because of the inertia on the hit on Rope Hintz, some folks are wondering maybe if he left his feet, but to me that's not a situation where it's charging and he left his feet. It just is the way that he attacked the hit in that situation. Wondered what your take on both of those issues were.
Yeah, and that, I go back to the Pittsburgh game. Was it Teddy Bluger? Who did he drill in the Pittsburgh game?
It was the broken jaw there. Yeah,
I forget the guy's name. But anyways, if somebody has it in the chat, post it. But it was the same sort of hit, right? Left leg is on the ground as he goes in, but the right leg comes off the ice, and it looks, as you said, it looks kind of like it's he's kind of launching himself into him. It's not really the case. If you look at the hit, and especially you look at the foot, the one foot never leaves the ice. So it was Bluger, perfect. So yeah, and so that's the kind of my I don't have an issue necessarily. I thought the fight. This is going to sound weird. I thought the fight was respectful. You saw Jamie Benn kind of nod at Dylan. Brendan was trying to catch his breath after a long shift, right?
Yeah,
Jamie Benn had just come on the ice.
Yeah.
And so there was kind of this head nod to Brendan, like, okay, you're okay. Because you can see this.
There's a 90-second shift, right? So
right, and Brendan Dillon's like sitting there. He's like, right. He's given the kind of the deep breath, and then it goes into the fight. I think it's one of those things where you're the captain of your hockey team. Two of your guys have been lit up, and you got to go and you got to go deal with it. They don't really have anybody else to kind of do that, and Jamie Benn's always kind of been that guy. For the lack of a better term, I thought it was a respectful fight. I thought it was one of those fights that I understand it doesn't need to happen, but that's the one where it's like, okay, you can't be running our guys all the time. And Klingberg's a big guy, and obviously Rope Hintz are both big key parts of that lineup that you don't want to be getting run. And at the same time, if Cole Perfetti and Ville Heinola got run, let's say it, you would expect Adam Lowry or Brendan Dillon to go after the other guy. This is the sort of thing where, if it's the other way around, you want somebody on your team doing that, because you don't want to be that team that just kind of rolls over and lets the other team just run wild on you. And so, I get the argument that it's that's not this and that, but I think it's one of those fights that it's just a business thing, right? It has to happen. Because that's how it works in this game, and whether or not we want it to be like that, that's just the way it is right now.
Sure, we'll get to the other things in a moment, but curious for your take on Dave Lowry's answer to Mike McIntyre's question about the net minding. To me, I didn't find it to be an overly taxing game for Connor Hellebuck. I mean, yes, the Darryl Stars are a team that gets to the net. I didn't find that the shot volume was necessarily that incredibly high. What did he finish with? He finished with let's check out the saves here.
Who, Ottinger or Hellebuck?
Hellebuck had 31 saves. I mean,
he's still all 9 on the power play, and so I mean that's kind of I don't know. He spent a lot of time on the power play tonight, but I think you got to go back with him, don't you? I mean, he's your number one. He gave you a really good chance to win tonight, I thought, and obviously didn't. You put Eric Comrie against a Nashville Predators team that's really good right now. I don't know.
I'd personally be tempted to play Comrie Monday against Chicago, and that's what I kind of said before the trip happened. But I guess
you still get that rest baked into that whole thing, right? So he does get the rest. We saw Connor Hellebuck play really well on the back-to-back, earlier in the year. So
Boston, Pittsburgh, the area we were just talking about.
And again, those games were both losses, but they weren't on Connor Hellebuck, right? So I don't have an issue with it. I mean, I guess you listen to Hellebuck, and he's always going to say, but he probably talked to Wade Flaherty, because he'd be the guy that would know Hellebuck the best and whether or not he's ready for that next game. Comrie did beat the Blues. I don't think that Eric Comrie is a bad option. No, I just think at this point of time, I don't know. You need your number one to be your number one, and all these games matter right now. I mean, you almost need the 2 points tomorrow. You got to win. You got to take 3 or 4 now on this kind of abbreviated road trip.
One quick one here. Our friend Lynette Reimer mentioned it. We have some big news on the merchandise front, folks. And once again, thanks for your incredible support out of the gate with the original shirts, the Wake Up and the Sean's headband. Added at the Shop Sportsnet store now, the Wake Up mug. That has a KNR logo on the back, and the new T-shirts with the KNR logo are available there. So, we didn't play any songs out of the gate. We don't have any headbands to wear, but we do have some news on the merchandise front.
I could fashion one, I'm sure.
Yeah, there you go. Something. So that's where we're at. With that, let's go back to the line change that has folks buzzing. I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, Cole made a really smart play on the drop pass. There's a lot of great plays all around on that play. Yeah. Excellent entry by Neil Pionk. Really good play to get it to Mark Scheifele. Great identification by Scheifele. At the time he made the pass to Perfetti, Harkins was not open. It was the best option available. Harkins sort of sensing, Spidey senses tingling, knowing that Harkins is behind him. He makes a smart drop pass, which allowed the over pursuit towards the puck. And Harkins just makes an absolutely deadly shot going, basically bar down on Ottinger in the play. Again, I agree. I think that Dave Lowry said it best. This is not a Cole Perfetti versus Jansen Harkins type of situation. Yeah. It was a big game. I mean, we said that the other night. Cole Perfetti handled himself very well in a heavy type of game against the Minnesota Wild. But what I would say that the benefit of Harkins in this situation is that he's bigger and his speed, his legs were really going tonight. And on a night where Pierre-Luc Dubois was an absolute animal once again, and we'll get to him in a second, and Kyle Connor was buzzing, I think having that speed element and a little more size on that line, especially when you saw the skill on the goal, and you also saw Harkins make an excellent play behind the net to set up Kyle Connor where he was robbed. What I would have liked to have seen, and we saw it late. I mean, Lowry did go to it for one or maybe a second shift, one for sure. Perfetti then went up in Christian Reichel's spot with Kopp and Lowry, and I thought that line had a pretty good shift there as well. Yeah. I maybe would have liked to have seen him go to that a little bit earlier. But I mean, in terms of some of the same folks that are upset with Perfetti not playing as much are the same people saying you're supposed to play the guys that are going, and there is no dispute that tonight Jansen Harkins was going. Not even a single shot attempt for Perfetti. I still thought he had some nice moments in the game, but if we're being honest, and that's what we're always trying to do, I didn't find Perfetti to be as impactful in this game outside of the assist, which again was a great play. I just didn't think they had the same kind of chemistry going. But again, maybe that had more to do with the fact that it's a different line that you're playing on and things of that nature. But that was my take on that situation. I think that Harkins was deserving. Another tough night for Yevgeny Svechnikov. I think only 4:30 or something like that. And I actually thought he had a pretty good first period when he was going. But let's shift gears to Dubois. Again, this is here's a great way to say it. Julie Sue. Wrecking ball is a great way to describe him. I thought that I think he started to get his legs quite early. Very involved physically. And, just the smarts. And again, he doesn't get an assist on the game-tying goal, but that play doesn't happen because there's nobody else on that ice that can get into a strength-on-strength battle with Jamie Benn along the boards and win the battle in order to allow Kyle Connor to get the puck back to Neil Pionk. I like that Dave Lowry stayed with the Lions for a little bit longer to make sure he had his legs underneath them. Dubois had some incredible plays on the power play. Some really good looks, some really good chances. And again, anyone who knows me knows that as soon as Pierre-Luc Dubois mentioned this morning that he is a new Motley Crue expert, his level raised. He found another level today. I'm curious to see what the fine for the T-shirt on Casual Friday will be, not having a suit, but definitely some applause, some applause and a golf clap for the Motley Crue reference. Watching the Dirt, which is an incredible documentary for those 80s rocker folks, and man, some touching moments in there too. But man, what a story, and man, just another impressive game by Dubois, who's now up to 19 goals on the season. But again, to me, it was more of the stuff that didn't necessarily show up on the game sheet. One last one before I turn it over to you. That play that he made that wasn't just a one-handed tip for the sake of making it
yeah.
a tip. That was a complete sneak attack because he didn't want Ottinger to think that he was actually going to make a play on the puck. That's the only reason why he took the bottom hand off of his stick and then poked it in there for the quick redirection. I mean, that's a pretty heady play right there by Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Well, I mean, you can talk about kickstart my heart.
Yeah, there you go.
Got the opening goal, maybe a little bit of Dr. Feelgood too.
Nice,
right?
nice. So, and I have one more for you. Okay. On my drive to hockey today, same old situation was playing. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, you could apply that title to the game and certainly to the outcome in the game as well.
Yeah, here's I would question anybody or challenge anybody to find me a game where PLD wasn't doing what he did tonight, right? Here's a guy who didn't play for 11 games. That wasn't an excuse for him tonight. He just went out and played hockey like he normally does. He basically tries to bulldoze his way to the net during overtime there to try and get a shot on, and nearly, again, just like Scheifele's near miss there too. He is the type of guy that, that's what you want from everybody on the ice. And this is a guy who's 23. He to me, he's the best center on this team at the moment. And he just plays with a certain. There's a standard for Pierre-Luc Dubois' play that is higher than a lot of players, and he hits it on most nights. And I think that's the biggest thing about how good he is. This is why you notice him all this time. This is why he's got 19 goals on the year. And he doesn't skip a beat. I mean, whatever. He was stuck in a hotel room. He's watching Netflix, whatever. The guy comes out. This is what he does, right? Like, he comes out. He plays the game every night. And, he's the one guy on this team. And there's others, too. I shouldn't say he's the one guy. But he's the one of the guys who you expect a certain level from him every night, and he delivers. And yeah, I mean, there's so many plays in that game, whether it's just the physicality that he brings, but he's not just about separating the puck, right? Like, he separates the puck and then takes it, right? And he does it so often, and so he's just a force out there. I mean, a force, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's what he is. The Jets need more effort from some of their other guys. I mean, I think that's part of it. He can't do it all. He's not expected to do it all. But he's in on a lot of those plays, and he's often in on a lot of the scoring chances. And yeah, it's remarkable, kind of coming off of not even really being with the team for the last 10 days, and having kind of an extended holiday, I suppose. Not really. I mean, you get COVID. It's not really, but he wasn't symptomatic. But yeah, I mean, I thought he bring exact. Well, you watched the game obviously in some hotel room, I imagine, in New York City on Tuesday, and he brought that energy, from that game, even though he didn't play in it, and brought it into the Dallas game. And I thought he was extremely effective again tonight. Yeah,
and I mean, on the flip side for Pionk, it was a high event game for Neil Pionk. Obviously involved offensively, couple smart plays on the night, but again, a couple tough plays. And yeah, it's interesting, Scott. I mean, I find that Neil Pionk's effort is always there, but it just something has been off compared to last year. A little bit. I mean, the reads aren't maybe as quick, and there have been some times where things haven't been as smoothly in the defensive zone. I mean, obviously, different partners again, but actually, I found it was really interesting that on several occasions, it seemed like Dave Lowry was trying to get Neil Pionk going by putting him with Josh Morrissey for stretches, especially offensive zone opportunities. Mm-hmm. And again, partly we know that Dylan DeMello has done such an excellent job at a mentorship role. Last year with Logan Stanley, and now at parts of the game with Ville Heinola. I wondered what your thoughts on the move with Pionk and Morrissey specifically. Maybe what stood out to you there, and if maybe that was a pairing that maybe you'd like to see more of.
I would, because I think that it offers more offense, right? I mean, here's a team that doesn't get a whole lot of it from their back end, right? This has been an issue now, since the days of Dustin Byfuglien and Jacob Trouba. I mean, so it's been 3 years since they've had a competent, I think, offensive blue line. And so, yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge right now. I think this team's been so conditioned to play defensive hockey that it's hard for someone to move up. You don't see that really in Ville Heinola's game, and so this is the guy that takes some of these chances. Obviously, the Philly one, the much the much talked about, one there that we've had good debates over. But I think that's you want Neil Pionk to be offensive because he can be. You've seen the spinoramas at the line and all those types of things, right? The instincts with him are there. I'm just not sure if he's playing with Ville Heinola. This is no knock against Ville Heinola, but I think what you want there, if you're Neil Pionk, is you don't want to hang him out to dry. Now, I mean, obviously that kind of is what happened tonight, but you want less of that. So you're more defensive minded, not really thinking as much about the offensive play. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I just think that sometimes, and you kind of mentioned it there, different pairings, different whatever. I think Dave Lowry is searching for something on that blue line. And I just don't know what it is. I mean, Brendan Dillon can shoot the puck, has a heavy shot, but we're not seeing it that much. Part of the time, maybe it's because he's in the box. I don't know. But, I just think it's kind of, I don't know, is it a concern? I think it's just there's not enough coming from the blue line. And then Neil Pionk's one of them. We've talked about this before. I think he's not having his best year. I don't know what the issue is. I'm not entirely sure. I know somebody mentioned he might be playing hurt. Maybe. I don't think so though. I mean, I don't really see an issue with him. I think he's still trying to be physical. He seems like a half step off, maybe not even a half step. Like a quarter step off, and at times that's making him miss, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. I think they need more offense from the blue line. I just don't know where they're going to get it from because it's not. They don't really utilize the blue line that much, and they do maybe on the power play where Josh Morrissey. I mean, that's the thing. Like Josh Morrissey, 4 of his goals this year are on the power play, and he's got 5. So it's one of those things where they're just not looking to the D-men for a lot. I mean, obviously you see, Nate Schmidt obviously gets that shot off, and they get the goal. But yeah, they're not getting a lot of actual goal scoring from the blue line this year, and it's more of a trend that's been around for a while.
For sure. Just one quick one. I don't want to spend too much time going back to the goalies, but Lawrence, no, the reason why I said that is because of the situation. And the reason why I actually had no problem with Eric Comrie playing. Obviously, there was some risk involved, but to me, Connor Hellebuck needed a break. That's why he didn't play against the Blues. He was burnt out at that point, basically, and took a night off. And the reason why I think it's different is because the Jets just had the All-Star break. So to me, and they had 2 days between games. They played Tuesday, then Friday. This is not a taxing cross-country flight. I mean, I would have some reluctance because it's 21 and a half hour difference between game times, with the game being at 22 and a half. So the game's at 6 tomorrow. But the reason why I think the situations are a little bit different is because Hellebuck is now fresh again. He had time during the break to spend with his family, with his newborn. I just think he would be a little bit fresher than he might have been going into that game against St. Louis. But I think that Eric Comrie is going to be seeing action. I mean, we know it's a busy week for the Jets. They're playing a ton of games. They've got a back-to-back coming up again next week. I mean, I'll be very curious to see how it goes. But that's why I see the situation differently. But again, I would have no problem if Eric Comrie plays. I just think that if you're looking to play one of the teams that you're chasing and you feel like you left a point on the table today, I could easily see how Dave Lowry would want to go back to his number one guy, and I think that his team would probably respond in front of him as well. But let's shift gears. What else caught your attention tonight?
I mean, we've touched on a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of people here. I thought Blake Wheeler. Okay, let's talk Blake Wheeler a little bit because the back checks in overtime were very good. I thought he showed. I know some people were saying in the chat we're a little bit kind of lukewarm on Blake Wheeler's game. I thought he played a good game. I thought he was that the back check in overtime that led to Scheifele's breakaway was perfect. I mean, there's probably a penalty there in 5-on-5, but in overtime, Wheeler knows just as well as anybody else out there that he's probably not getting one called against you, at least not the first one. So I didn't have an issue with Blake Wheeler's game as some people do. I think sometimes we find, and same with Mark Scheifele. Like I thought, other than that goal, I thought Mark Scheifele was more engaged, especially in that third period. The Sagan goal notwithstanding, I thought that Mark Scheifele, somebody said it, when he gives a damn, he plays really well. And I think that's been part of the problem this year. It's that lack of engagement. But I thought in that third period, he really kind of raised the level of his game there. And we talked about the penalty. I know some people have just got in. I thought that penalty was so weak, but yeah, I mean, I thought those two guys much maligned at times in this town and by fans at times. I thought they had good games tonight, and I'm not sure where you're at on that, but I thought they played well. I thought Shifley's played well in the last couple of games. Ever since we've had the break and there was some stuff written about him, and we all had our kind of say on it, and I thought he's come out rested and reflected and whatever he was talking about there, and he's put together a couple decent games, and it's been a real tough year for Mark Scheifele. I don't know what it is, if it the Olympic pressures to start it, the COVID, all that stuff. But tonight he made sure that the Jets got a point with that shot. Was it a flub shot? Was it floater? Whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. It's in the back of the net, and the Jets at least get 1 point out of that because Mark Scheifele, had the wherewithal at that point to fire that one into traffic, and it went through, obviously.
Yeah, and the other thing about Scheifele tonight, and I know some folks, I mean, it was hard to see in real time. I mean, some folks just thought he airmailed the backhand over the net. I mean, Odger makes an unbelievable save with his right arm. He gets his right arm up. It didn't quite get to the shoulder level, but he made an incredible save. Like, that's a great explosive burst. It's a good move. Fake shot, goes to the backhand. Odger just comes up and makes an exceptional save on that play. Yeah, in terms of Blake's play, I think the effort is always there. I think it would be fair to say that, coming back from the injury, I don't think he's gotten back to the speed that he was showing in the games leading up to December 10th, which was his best game of the year. But I mean, let's get real here. I mean, this is a guy who's barely missed any time over his career, and the timing could not have been any worse. Wheeler got to a point where his legs were there and they were back to being a weapon for him. And if you have MCL injury, which I think that was what it was.
I don't think it was ever disclosed, was it?
No, not fully.
An MCL sprain, but yeah, you're probably right. It's got to be that. So
I mean, it's just tough to get back up to speed, and I mean, the managing of the off. I mean, with so many games, tonight was 39 and 78 days. I mean, almost no practice time. So trying to keep your body. I mean, there is going to be no optimal level. You're just going to try to get as much out of your body as you possibly can if you're Blake Wheeler and Paul Stastny, and I mean everyone else. But I mean, if you're 35 years old, I mean it's tough to come back from an injury of that nature. But I think you're right. I mean, the effort is definitely there, but it's just going to take some additional time to get back up to the speed that he was generating at. What did you think of the Lowry line, at least out of the gate today?
Yeah, I thought it was good, but just one here on so the Seattle Kraken beat the Anaheim Ducks in regulation. So there we go. The Seattle Kraken will be in Winnipeg next Thursday, I believe it is.
The Mason Appleton return.
That's right, doing the Jets a little bit of a favor there, keep them just 9 points back instead of I believe it's 9 points back.
Yep, 9 behind the Ducks. With 5 games in hand.
Yeah, so they gain a point. And but anyways, I thought the Lowry line was fine. I mean, I think that line's play led to Pierre-Luc Dubois moving up. I think that was part of it too. Later in the game, I liked the line from last game with Reichel and who else was it? It was his Svechnikov, I believe it was in the last game. To start, and I like that line.
That line last game.
Last game, and I like that. I mean, I've liked that line. I thought it was a good shutdown line that was utilized quite a bit. I was talking about this with Kelly Moore on the pregame show on CDLB there, and that line did a very good job neutering Kirill Kaprizov. I mean, I know Kirill had 7 shots in that game, but they weren't a lot of very high danger shots. I mean, he was firing shots from the point at times in that game. I thought they had a really good game shutting down. Dallas is a different team. Pretty much just kind of a one-line team at this point in terms of their offense. But I thought, I don't know. Sometimes I'm wondering if, Dave Lowry was kind of overthinking a little bit. I think at this point he should probably have known that you could have started PLD on the second line center and let him back in. I get that he hadn't seen him in 11 days, but maybe you know him at this point right now that he's going to give that maximum effort. Yeah, you can jump.
I have a quick counter to that, and I talked about it with Huss earlier. I have no problem with the premise, Scottie, at all. But what I would say that for folks that are like, let's not forget that this is a guy who, coming out of quarantine last year, got hurt in his second game back with the Winnipeg Jets after the trade, right after his second game against Calgary. I mean, he had the groin issue or whatever that ended up being. I mean, I think it was just done to protect the player. I mean, and by the, you could tell pretty early that Dubois was going to be fine. Was there a little bit of disruption? But I mean, the other part of that equation too, like Kopp played very well in that role the other night, right? I mean, I don't think it was as much about the third line, but I mean, where did Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele start when they came out of COVID? With Adam Lowry, right? In that line, I mean, you were the champion of that line given their analytics and underlying numbers, right? So, and tonight the Jets' third line had them going early on. So, I don't think it was a strategic issue by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, again, this is a guy you got to lean on. And the other part too, like if the Jets don't play back-to-backs, then maybe it's easier to go, second line out of the gate as well. I think it was more done to protect the player and.
And it took him, sorry, go ahead, yeah. No,
that's good. Fourth line maniac. So if that's what you're hearing, who's the trade going to be made for? Who's the player coming back if Andrew Kopp is indeed going to the New York Rangers? I would think the New York Rangers would be among the suitors that are interested in Andrew Kopp, but there's going to be a lot of teams interested in Andrew Kopp if Andrew Kopp is available. One quick one too. I know that obviously we're going to spend more time talking about the game here, but what was your take on? I mean, we haven't had a show since Kevin Cheveldayoff spoke on Wednesday. So, what were your takeaways on how he handled the questions about the trade deadline specifically?
I think he's probably being honest. I mean, at this point, you're probably still, as a general manager, you're thinking of what you're selling because at this point, you're still, or at that point, I think there was, maybe it was 10 points out, 9, whatever they were at that point on that day. But I think you have to be thinking about that more than you have to be thinking about being a buyer right now because you're so far out of the line. He played the political card, right? I mean, you say that's too early to tell, and you don't want to say to your team that, hey, thinking of selling some guys, right? I mean, that's pretty deflating, of course, right? So at the same time, I it was just, it was the Kevin Cheveldayoff press conference. There's a lot said, but a lot of it doesn't always mean a lot because, he's very good at talking. And I think we call it Chevy speak at times, and so there was quite a bit of that. I think he does believe in the team. I think he has to. I mean, he built it. I think he was honest too about it, though. The players have to go out. I mean, they've made a coaching change. Dave Lowry is now installed there. He's brought, in my opinion, a different type of culture into that room, maybe kind of taking the room back a little bit in terms of how much voice the coach has, I suppose. But at the same time, I mean, and he said this a couple times during the press conference, our best players have to be our best players. And there's been times this year, and maybe more times than not, where that hasn't always been the case. And so he's right on that. I mean, I think that was kind of one of the bigger things. I was like, he's right. I mean, he's saying the same things, but a lot of the time is, your best players need to be that. I don't know. What did you take out of it? I mean, again, it's always tough on these ones because, again, he's really good at not saying a whole lot, but saying a lot. So, what are your kind of takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting. I mean, I'm not surprised by how he handled that question. I mean, I asked him initially. I mean, again, and Kevin Cheveldayoff has historically kept his cards pretty close to the vest.
Yep.
I would say that in the last year, I think certainly how he discussed the Patrick Laine situation was a little bit more forthcoming than previous situations. What I would also say is that one of my bigger takeaways, yes, he did say the players are the ones who can effectuate the game, but he didn't really double down on his original challenge to the players, which first came privately and then came publicly. And I think that part of that reason is because the Jets haven't really responded the way that maybe a lot of people expected to that original challenge.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I would even say too, I mean, I just mean that they haven't really, a lot of this, I mean, I think they're playing better in a lot of ways, but the competition is also better and the results haven't necessarily been better. I mean, people are saying, well, Dave Lowry's under 500. Well, I think that Dave Lowry's done a good job on a lot of fronts, instituting certain things and sort of having more of a reward system for certain players and kind of opening the door at times for some others. I mean, again, we know the situation and we know the circumstances are challenging for every team in the National Hockey League, but I'm not surprised that he took the tack that he did with his pending UFAs. I would say that I was a little bit surprised that he made it, public that he hadn't really had a lot of discussions with Paul Stastny or Andrew Kopp. To me, I mean, again, those are two guys the Jets are obviously interested in. I think, yes, it does have much more to do with the fact that the economics of the NHL are not quite as clear. But, I mean, if you don't have those guys, if you haven't had conversations leading towards a potential contract, and the Jets don't find a way to get the race a little bit tighter in the next 3 to 4 weeks, I mean, man, those last 2 weeks before the deadline, they're certainly, I mean, he's going to be taking calls regardless. That's his job to listen to offers. But that was one thing that stood out.
Yeah.
And then the other part was one other quick one, just the Dubois, the fact that, I mean, he went out of his way to say that he made contact with Pat Brisson, Pierre-Luc Dubois' agent during the break, which is very good business for the Winnipeg Jets. I think it's more likely to be an off-season move, but that's something we know that this is you traded a foundational piece and you got in Patrick Laine and you got one back, and that trade becomes a lot more valuable to the Winnipeg Jets if Pierre-Luc Dubois is signed for 5, 6, or 7 years. Even though we know it's going to be a raise from the $5 million AAV and the $6.35 million he's making in salary this year. So that was the other takeaway for me.
Well, I think part of it too is Paul Stastny has been. I'll talk about Paul Stastny. Yeah, he's been very loyal to this club in terms of coming to play here, taking a trade back, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, he left for Vegas. Can't really fault him for that because you take more money, especially in the twilight of your career. But if I'm Paul Stastny and I'm Kevin Shoveldayoff, I'm probably if it's not going to work out this year, I'm looking for going to a contender. If I'm Paul Stastny, here's a guy who's played in the league now for close to 20 years, I think it is. Well, a little less than that, maybe 17 now. But it hasn't won a cup yet. I think he's the type of guy that you try and offload, get something from the Avalanche or something from I don't know if it's maybe New York, even Tampa, who knows, right? One of those teams, Florida, somebody, right, that wants a guy that's a veteran and do that. That's kind of there's a good question in here though, and maybe we should bring it up. It's probably
one quick one. I just want to finish your thought on Stastny. I think that I've mentioned the Colorado Avalanche as he would be a perfect fit there. Obviously, we know they have a deep lineup, but to me, I mean, he played college hockey at Denver. He started his career with the Avalanche. I think that that's a place that he would fit in very well, whether that's as a third line player or wherever you start. But you can use him on the penalty kill. You can use him on the power play. We know exactly what he did for the Jets when he arrived in 2018, helping them to the conference final. I think he's a perfect player for any contender. But to me, there's a lot of maybe two, maybe because of the writing positions that we're in. I think it's a good story if that's the way that it gets to. I think that Paul Stastny puts a pretty tidy bow on his career if he can join the Colorado Avalanche. But again, it depends on the money.
Right. What did we talk about the Colorado was missing last year, right?
Veteran experience.
Right. And so, maybe that's what you get. They're also after Claude Giroux, obviously.
Sure.
They're a veteran player. I think that's what that team needs too, right? Is that veteran presence in the room. Obviously, neither Claude Giroux or Paul Stastny have won cups, but they've been to the dance. I believe Colorado went to it one year. I know Philly did with Claude Giroux a couple times, I think now. So that's the sort of thing where, I think you just want that veteran experience, and that's what they need. And I think if you're the Jets, if you can figure it out, that's probably where you send them. I feel like this is kind of a defeatist conversation with 38 games to go, but the reality is right now that is. And the one question I want to talk about, it wasn't really a question, but Corbin Johnson way up here now, still 1147. Chevy should be on the hot seat. What do you think about that? I don't know how much you guys talked about in the last one, but do you think that Kevin Shoveldayoff will be on the hot seat or should be at this point?
Well, I think that I would say it's getting warmer than at any point in his tenure so far. The facts are, the last 2 years have been incredibly challenging on a lot of fronts. The one thing I would say that, the biggest issue for the Jets going into the season was believed to be the defense core, and he addressed that by going out and getting 2 defensemen that had term on their deals. So the script is kind of flipped when it comes to defense, and not nobody's pinning this on Nate Schmidt or Brendan Dillon by any stretch, but the Jets' emergence of their young players on the back end is sort of, they've gone from shortage to surplus basically overnight. But if the Jets hadn't made any veteran additions, people probably would have been a little bit up in arms as well. So I think how he handles this trade deadline will be incredibly interesting on a number of fronts. We know that, the other thing that stood out, he talked about the maybe potential for hockey trades, but with it being a dollar for dollar situation when the Jets are healthy as a cap ceiling team that's into LTIR, I would think any big blockbuster would have to happen in the summertime. Otherwise, you're eliminating half the field. 16 teams in the NHL are into LTIR, so not a lot of teams can afford a $4, $5, $6 million player. So again, it's so interesting. Is that a panic move if you make one in season, and you're eliminating half the field, and most contenders can't take on that much salary? So I would say
you limit your return,
big,
sure.
Any big move like blockbuster kind of city specials, I see being more around draft time. But I think there is a potential to the roster composition. I think is one thing, Scott, that I would say needs the potential to change. Even too, Kevin Cheveldayoff said the team was top heavy, and some of the top performers have not played at that elite level this year. So when that's happening, you have to take a look, especially when you look around the Central Division. Not a lot of these teams are going away. Yes, Dallas has big questions with Joe Pavelski and John Klingberg, and yes, Minnesota will have cap issues with Suter, the buyouts with Suter and Parise, but their core group is locked up for the long term. So it's not like any of these teams in the Central are going away. St. Louis just locked up Craig Berube in a contract extension. So
Nashville's come in and rejuvenated themselves too, right? So
if this core group has been together for the bulk of the time here, yes, there are new pieces coming in and integrating, and some guys have taken their game to another level, and we've seen glimpses of the young players that are integrating well. But if it's only led to 3 series victories, and this is going on the 11th season, if you keep going back to the same core and are expecting different results, that's risky, right? That has to be a risky proposition. But I would say
for that, yeah. I hear you. Yeah, I know.
So I wouldn't say blazing hot, but I would say definitely warmer than I can remember it being, for sure.
Yeah, no, and you kind of know my thoughts, but part of it is that whole thing with the 3. I think one of the things that also stood out, I'm just cycling my memory now of Chevy Zavale, and one of the things that he's talked about, and again, part of my issue with what he said about the young guys, right? He was asked about the young players, so he was fawning over them. Of course he is. He's drafted and developed a lot of these guys, and they're coming up and playing big roles with this team. But to me, and I've always seen it as a certain, let's kick the can down the road a little bit longer, right? Well, we're 11 years into this, and we've seen, again, I'm not going to ever question Cheveldayoff's ability to draft and develop players, because this lineup is riddled with them. My issue is, has this team drafted and developed the right players? And I'm not always sure that's the case. If you look on defense, a lot of those guys are smaller. Maybe not, I don't even want to call it that, but it's a lot of the same guys. On forward, again, a lot of the same types of players too, skilled players, whatever. What are the Jets missing half the time then? Physical presence, up front, scoring defensemen, just playing a harder team to play against. To me, there's just not enough of the right pieces in play. And I think this extends to other things. And when it comes to a hot seat, or whatever you want to call it, let's not forget, we're into season 3 of the pandemic here. There's been a lot of money lost. How long does Mark Chipman, the owner of the Jets, want to go on being a cap team if your results are not of what a cap team should be? Missing the playoffs this year is disastrous, is it not? That's how I see it. You're not even a cap, you're an LTR team. They're spending close to $90 million this year on this roster. You're 10 points back right now of a playoff spot. That's unacceptable if you're Mark Chipman, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of loyalty there. We saw it during the whole Kyle Beach thing, all that. There is a ton of loyalty there, and there's been a long leash given to Kevin Cheveldayoff to build and mold this roster. It just lacks the Julian Brisebois or the other GMs that have built rosters, even Joe Sakic, whoever. It's not Joe. Who's GM? Is it still Sakic in Colorado? Oh,
Yep.
Yeah. But it's just like it almost missing that vision that you need to what a Stanley Cup winning team looks like, or at least a very good perennial contender. And I think that's missing right now. That this team isn't built, and by his own admission, it's top heavy. Yeah, and that's part of the problem right now. The Jets don't have a lot of wiggle room to really change this up without now making a large move. Can they dump a Blake Wheeler contract on another team? That would take a lot, right? I mean, that would take a lot to get rid of Blake Wheeler. Could you even get rid of Blake Wheeler? He's got a full no movement clause on his contract. I think in the last couple of years, there's a few teams, right, that he could agree to go to. But yeah, I wonder about.
I just don't see that happening. I don't
either. Yeah, but anyways, I mean that's kind of that's I don't know. I think you're at a point in this franchise where and we've talked about this, you guys have talked about it on your show. If there's a 2 or 3 year window here right now, has that changed with the advent of Cole Perfetti coming up, Dylan Samberg looking really good, Billy Heinola? Has that changed the outlook? I don't know, because what are you going to do without Connor Hellebuck in a few years if he doesn't re-sign here? I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done between now and then to win a Stanley Cup in that time. And there's a lot of tough decisions, I think, that need to be made.
Quick one here, Lynette. Ehlers, Dave Lowry was asked this week about it, and he said he couldn't give a specific timeline, but said it could be 2 weeks, could be 4 weeks. So I would say it's probably safer to split the difference. I don't, again, I said this for a couple of weeks now. I did not expect him to be back. Monday was the first day he could be removed from LTIR. That's the 10 days and 10 games in 24 days, not or, it's and. But again, I think that until we see him in a gold jersey in practice, he will not be on the radar. I think we will see him on the ice at some point here coming up, but I would say it's a minimum of 2 weeks. I'd say it's probably going to be closer to 3 weeks. So in that time, the cavalry won't be here for a while. So the guys that are in the lineup are going to have to get the job done on those fronts. So the Jets obviously miss Ehlers. I mean, some people have been saying that in the chat room. I mean, I think that this is something that we've talked about a lot, and he's just such a dynamic player, and the Jets really do miss him on so many fronts. What else here? What else? You're almost wrapping up. Anything else that you wanted? I mean, I know this too. So there's reiterating the goaltending part. So in a lot of ways, I mean, Connor Hellebuck, I think I said it too. Out of the last 40, I would say the over-under was 32.5, and I'm probably going to say it's going to be pretty close to that number, unless they really tail off. But Comrie's a guy that the Jets are going to have to make a decision on. We know that next year Mikhail Burden is on a one-way deal. He will not be exempt from waivers. Goalies like Burden would attract interest to, whether that's a team like, I don't know if it's Seattle or Arizona or teams like that. I know everyone has their own goaltending depth, but I don't know that Burden is a guy that would necessarily clear waivers anyway. So you're going to have to make a decision on whether or not Eric Comrie is ready. His numbers have been fantastic. We know the sample size is still small, relatively speaking, but if he can stack up a couple more games like he had against the St. Louis Blues, that would make the Jets more confident when it came to what their decision is going to have to be going forward. And I would also say, too, I think that, I haven't seen the Moose live yet this year, but I think Arvid Holm is a guy that the organization has some high hopes for. But not necessarily talking about a 1 year away from being an NHLer, but this is a guy who really works on his craft, and I think he's going to be an NHL goalie. But again, he needs more reps and he needs more games, and he needs probably a full year as a starter before you can make a real determination. But I'm interested to see how he plays. Somebody else quickly asked about Nathan Smith, and what I would say here too, somebody asked if Smith could be a regular if he came out of college. Well, first and foremost, Minnesota State, Mankato, they're one of the best teams in the NCAA. They're probably going to be playing pretty deep into the spring here. If the Jets could get him signed and they could get him a game or two, I think that would be positive. The big thing for me, for Nathan Smith, I think that we know the Moose have a really good team and they could potentially go on a Calder Cup run. if they can get him signed and then be able to assign him to the Moose for a potential playoff run, like they did with a guy like Josh Morrissey, Eric Comrie, Mark Scheifele, even in St. John's, I think that would be incredibly valuable for them. It's for him specifically. But when Kevin Cheveldayoff said he would have, so what he said here too, the Jets were interested in signing Nathan Smith after his sophomore season. He chose to go back for his junior year, knowing that their team, much like Dylan Sandberg, knew that their team would be a real contender. He wanted to try to win a Frozen Four title, and now the bonus for Nathan Smith is now that he's playing at the Olympic Games. So exciting times for him on a lot of fronts. But when he said he thought that he could, he would have played because of all the, it was more a conversation about the COVID cases. I don't think that he was saying Nathan Smith would have been on the NHL team as a regular for this entire season, but he is a dynamic player, and he's a guy who projects really well. He has a lot of what they don't have. He's a really good skater. He's a right-handed shot. They don't have a lot of those guys. So, but I do not think he was saying, to me this reminds me of Sandberg again, where most people thought, if Dylan Sandberg hadn't gone back for his junior year at the University of Minnesota Duluth, that he would have been with the Jets. Well, no, he would have been with the Moose primarily and might have got some time. So similar to Nathan Smith, if he had been with the Moose, he would have had some call-ups because of his skill set. But he's a really exciting player. But the Jets are going to have to get him signed as well at the end of his college season, which again could go pretty deep. So I don't think he'd be a guy who would be coming in and making a massive impact, but he's the guy that I think they see as being an important part of this next wave here, kind of bridging that gap between the experienced veterans and some of these younger players. One other quick one, Chaz Lucius had another big game tonight, at least a goal and an assist for the University of Minnesota. And for the folks who don't know, I did see him live at the end of November, and he had a fantastic showing at the University of North Dakota, playing for the Golden Gophers. So he's really come a long way. But I would also say this, some folks comparing Chaz Lucius to Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor should have won the Hobey Baker Award. He had 65 points as a freshman. So to me, I think in the conversation with Bob Motzko, the head coach there, I think that Lucius probably needs another year. And the sort of the tie-in with that, much like when Tucker Poolman decided to go back to the University of North Dakota to play with his brother Colton, Chaz's brother, who is draft eligible this year, I believe has committed to playing. I don't know if it's official or whatever else, but the expectation is his younger brother will play at the University of Minnesota, which would make the appeal to return even greater. And especially too, when you consider all the time he missed because of injury the last couple of years, I expect Lucius to be at least a 2-year college player before he's even considering turning pro there. So sorry, I know that was a long trip to the buffet, but anything else?
One thing. Well, just on how much does Mikhail Burton play in the NHL this season if the Jets are eliminated early? Do you think he plays some? Do they get an idea of what he might be capable of next season, and if he is a capable, backup if they can't or don't want to resign Eric Comrie?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting concept. I think that just because of the the calendar wise, you need to make the decision on Comrie first. Would you like to see Burton give him a couple starts? Maybe, but the Jets will probably have to be out of it in order for that to be the case, right? And now you get into, again, you don't want to run Hellbuck into the ground if the Jets are out of contention, but
right.
Obviously they're going to be playing for it as long as they can. So,
of course.
But again, I think they're going to want to get a look at him. But the other thing too, Scott, with where the Moose are at, the most valuable thing for Burton would be a long playoff run, Calder Cup kind of run, and that's what helped Michael Hutchinson get ready for future NHL duties. So I would think that would be something that would be incredibly high in terms of value for those guys.
Yeah, fair point.
Okay, and one more plug. We're almost done here, but
get your merch.
Yeah, folks. Good news, and thanks again for your incredible support so far. I think we're also going to have the Kenny's water bottle Kenny's water bottle available at some point here too. But we got a new T-shirt available, the KNR logo T-shirt. You got the Wake Up coffee mug, and some exciting stuff there for the weekend. If you have any other questions, fire away on the Twitter machine and everything like that. We had a super fun show with Christina Rutherford and Arash Madani the other day. That was a lot of fun on Thursday for our long form show, and we'll be back tomorrow night to fire up the latest installment of the Kenny and Renny show last time I'm going to put you on this, not on the spot. We already talked about it earlier, but who's in the pipes? Who's in the pipes tomorrow, and are there any lineup changes potentially?
Connor Hellebuck's in the pipes tomorrow for sure. I mean, I just, if you're Dave Lowry, you're going with your big guy, and that you want him to play. I don't think like you said earlier, I mean, the flight's not very long. We've both been on that flight before. It's not a long one, even less time when you're on a chart, right? So, and, you know, I think they get a good rest in tonight, and you're not going to get into Nashville too late. And, so, and yeah, I think it's him. You know, I think it's Hellebuck. And other than that, I don't really foresee anything on the back end. Forward, no. I mean, I just, you know, to me, Christian Vesline is just not probably built for that game. Maybe you put Austin Poganski back in the lineup, maybe, you know, for that kind of physical play. I think that's going to get ratcheted up even more tomorrow night against Nashville. That's kind of their MO now. They're pretty good at that that facet of the game. So maybe Poganski returns to the lineup. But other than that, no, I don't think you see any lineup changes, you know, anything major.
No, right on. And just for other folks, I think Hellebuck plays as well. And yeah, I do think that there's a potential for Poganski, but I'm not 100% sure there. I mean, obviously, I think it's going to be a heavy game and another fun tilt. One other update. David Gustafson was back on the ice with the Jets today. Looks like he's inching towards a return to the lineup as well. And I think there too. I mean, Dominic Toninato gives ample effort, and he's done a nice job on the PK. But I just think that if Gustafson is on that fourth line center spot, I think you got a little bit more skill to run with the wingers. There obviously he needs to stay healthy and get through more than a first period, but I think that's a guy that the Jets are going to be leaning on. You know, not leaning on, but they want to have that audition will start quickly here, especially if there are some pending moves with those UFAs. If the Jets don't find a way to get on a roll here, and we know that they're gonna have to win 3 out of 5 in those 8 5-game segments, and right now they're 1-0-1 in this segment. So,
which is horrible. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, they got to win at least.
The margin for error just gets tighter as they get closer. Yeah, there's still half a season to play. There's no doubt about that. But the margin gets tighter every time a point is left on the table. But yeah, another fun night. Chat room buzzing as usual. Scottie, thanks for your help. Keep her going, and we will see you again, folks. And we'll see you after the game tomorrow. Good night, everyone. Have a great weekend.